This is the new IH3 3.5-inch FPV quad from iFlight. This isn't a 3.5-inch race quad, bando basher, or really a freestyle quad. It is a cruiser designed to get you nice O3 based footage, decent flight time, be lightweight, portable, and actually far less intrusive than a traditional 5-inch quad. Now, what we're going to do today is walk you through its features and capabilities, and then at the end, I'm going to share with you my thoughts, having spent some time with it. Now, just to be crystal clear up front, iFlight did send me this quad for free. However, they have not seen this video before it's been published. I have not been paid to make this video, and as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. Anyway, let's get on with it, and let's take a closer look at what the IH3 is all about. So, first of all, let's do a very fast unboxing. In the kit, you get the drone itself in the middle, spare props. We have this little bag, which contains our battery grip mat, some extra screws, as well as a little cable. Not sure what the cable is for. Then, we've got the drone itself in the bottom of the box, which we'll come back to in a moment. And then we've got a whole host of leaflets that iFlight include what seems to be a Betaflight guide with regards to GPS, terms and conditions, safety and responsibility, stickers, ExpressLrs setup, as well as a printed sheet with regards to Betaflight presets. Now, this IH3 has been specifically designed to use the DJI O3 system. The bind and fly version comes with the DJI O3 air unit pre-fitted with the camera up front on a TPU and silicon mount, and then the air unit itself located in the back. The version I've got here is the ExpressLrs edition, and that receiver is mounted on a little TPU bracket just above the air unit, and you can see the antenna for that located at the back here as well. This model uses the Blitz Mini F7 flight controller as well as the Blitz Mini E55 4-in-1 ESC, and it also has a GPS module included as well, located at the back. You can see it there just next to the antenna. That's mounted on this little TPU bracket, which actually will fold down underneath the quad out the way as well. Now, motor-wise, this quad is fitted with the Zing 1504's 3100 kV motors, and it's designed to be used with a 4S battery of between sort of 800 and 1000 milliamp hour. Now, you can easily see that this quad is a H-frame design, and if I flip it over, you can see that the arms are actually part of the bottom frame plate. So if you were to break one, you would actually have to replace the whole bottom part of the quad. However, this isn't the kind of quad that I'd specifically be wanting to bash around too much, especially based on the DJI O3 system. Now, the IH3 is classed as a 3.5-inch prop, and they do include a set with it. Size-wise, if we take a look side to side, it is roughly 6.25 inches, and then length side, front to back, it is roughly 7.25 with the GPS mount at the back. Weight-wise, I have checked it, and it's roughly 206 grams without the battery, as you see it here, all up with the GPS antenna. And again, the only additional weight you'll be adding is your battery or your GoPro at the front. Now, that GPS module, which I mentioned earlier, is actually a Blitz M10, which is based on the 10th generation U-Blox chipset. That means you're going to get faster acquisition times and overall improved GPS performance, and it's great to see iFlight include that with this quad. Now, as I did mention at the start, the antenna that they do include with this build is the standard DJI O3 antenna. This actually goes into this little mount on the back here, and you can easily pop this out for storage or transportation, but then when you're ready to fly, pop it in and it's nice and solid, ready to go. It does stick out over the top of the GPS, but I'm not expecting that to cause too many problems, especially since that is that M10 model. Now, some of the nice features on this quad is that it does have that built-in GPS. It has an XT30 power connector with that built-in spark protector like we've seen on other iFlight models, and it also has this front-end canopy that not only offers the isolation for the O3 camera, but it also has a mount designed to be used with a naked GoPro or a GoPro Bones. Now, just like we've seen from other iFlight quads, the overall fit, finish and build quality on the new IH3 is fantastic. Nothing at all looks out of place. Everything is exactly where it needs to be, and they really are doing an outstanding job of providing off-the-shelf, ready-to-fly, proper FPV quads. So next, it's time to get the quad out and about and take a look at how it performs. Now, when I got this quad, it does come with Betaflight 4.3 installed. It doesn't have Betaflight 4.4. That is because at the moment, iFlight are not installing the new 4.4 version with the improved GPS performance because there are a few bugs in it. As a result of that, you're not getting the very best possible GPS results on this quad with regards to return to home. However, you will be able to upgrade to 4.4 in the future once Betaflight have everything tied down and all of the little issues solved. So as a result of that, it is worth mentioning that it is on that 4.3. Now, let's take a look at the GPS acquisition performance first, and then we'll take it for a flight. Okay, so I'm getting set up, and what we're going to do is a test first of all to show you the GPS. So what we're going to do first is plug in the aircraft, then you will see the goggles connect, and then what I will do is start recording immediately because I want to just demo the amount of time it takes for the GPS to get lock. I have noticed that it is quite slow on this quad. I'm just waiting for the goggles to connect. There we go. And I'm just going to start recording immediately just so you can see. And that way, this will now give you an indication of just how long the GPS takes to get its lock. Okay, so as you've now seen, it's finally got GPS lock. Now what I ended up having to do was move the O3 antenna to the side to allow the lock to kick in, but that was well over 5 minutes before it actually got proper GPS lock. Now, if instead of powering it up with the antenna over the top and you power it with the antenna at the side for the first time, you do get much more normal acquisition times and it's able to get that sat lock without any problems at all. So it really is only an issue if you have got that antenna in place over the top when you power it up for the first time. Now, I have spent a bit more time looking at this, and the reality is it becomes a problem of physics in the sense of there is only so much space on the quad and so many places they can put things. As I've shown already, it can take a long time to lock with the O3 antenna over the top, but if you power it up from scratch with that antenna at the side, acquisition times are much better. What's a bit of a shame on this is that you can't actually power the GPS via the flight controller's USB. Whilst the receiver powers up, the GPS doesn't. So the only option you do have is to lay that antenna down at the side. But as long as you remember to do that for the first main acquisition, you should be absolutely fine. Next, it's time to get the quad in the air. Now, the first few flights were at my local testing field. This is just really to shake the quad down, to get a feel for how it is, and also just do some testing with the rock steady versus the stabilization off, and then we'll get it down the beach and take it for a bit more proper flying. Now, the first bit of footage I want to show you is a couple of flights on the field doing it with both rock steady on and rock steady off, and just to show you the effect of image stabilization on this quad. The first flight you're seeing here is with rock steady off, and then I'll try to mirror that flight again with rock steady on, and it should show you the differences between the two with regards to the stabilization on this quad. Now, these were just a couple of shakedown flights for me to be able to get used to the tune, the feel of the quad, and also just make sure it's working as expected before I take it down the beach. Now, overall, the tune is fairly soft. It's not aggressive, but it's okay. There's no major problems with it. I was flying it with these 850 milliamp hour packs, and I was getting about 4.5 minutes, no problem at all. You'll obviously be able to get longer flight time if you go up with the battery or you move over to some other cells. Now, the way this quad flies is okay. It's not the best, it's not the worst. It's certainly not a freestyle quad. As I said, it comes quite tame out of the box, but I do also find at times it lacks a little bit of authority. I think that's probably down to the size of the motors. It also doesn't like to get low down to the ground at times. It wants to get up. It doesn't have that weight that you'll have in a 5-inch quad. It's very much tuned like a cine quad, but it does, as a result of those 1500 kV motors, I think at times struggle with the wind a little bit, but we will talk about that a bit more after the next flights. So what I did next was take it down the beach, and we're going to take a look at that footage next. Okay, now just to discuss what we've seen in that footage. Now, I want to say it was quite windy that day. Whilst it didn't necessarily reflect on the water, there was quite a wind coming up the valley, and you can see it at times with the angle I'm having to fly the quad. Overall, it flies very well, but I do think it's a little bit underpowered. I think iFlight probably could have benefited on this with a slightly higher KV motor. It does struggle at times to combat movement from the wind. It does, though, fly very well, and both the gyro flow stabilization works well, as we know from O3 before, and the Rocksteady does a decent job on this, as you've seen in some of the field footage. But there are occasions where some of that movement sneaks through and there's nothing you can really do about it. I also want to say you would have seen some jello in that footage, especially when I turned back around and came across the beach. That is because of the very bright sun levels, the very fast shutter speeds. I was not using ND filters in the day. I didn't bring them with me, unfortunately, and as a result of that, you did see the jello. That is simply because of the usual things affecting the camera. Overall, I do think this quad flies quite nicely. It does a good job. I just think at times, especially in slightly windy conditions, it is a little bit underpowered. Now, just another observation I want to make with regards to this quad and that jello you've seen in some of the footage. It may actually be partly due to the camera mount. Now, I'm not saying the camera mount is bad. It's a TPU front end with silicone inserts, but it is quite loose in the sense of the camera sits in these TPU parts. The screws are tight, but it does move very, very easily. On a number of flights, I did find that the camera was working its way down by itself, whether that was happening in landing or it was simply happening in flight itself. But what I would say is I would probably put a washer behind that bottom screw on each side and just tighten things up a little bit. It's not super loose, but it is enough that it can move, and I do wonder if that is playing into that fact. I do also want to mention that I have crashed this frame a number of times. You saw one of them in the video. You can see that there's a bit of mud around there as well. Nothing horrific, nothing into concrete, just mud in fields, and overall it's held up fine. No real damage. I've scraped the props up a little bit here and there, as you can see. Might be playing into some of that jello a little bit as well, but overall it does tend to crash quite well, and I have found that both the antenna and the front end protect the quad. It tends to push it off that way, push it off that way. You can see I have bent it over a little bit there, but it certainly isn't one you'd want to smash into too much concrete, because if you did break the frame, you're going to need to change that whole plate. One thing I do want to talk about quickly is sound. Now, small quads like this are usually quite loud. However, the IH3 isn't terrible. It's certainly not remotely as loud as the Avata, and whilst it does still have that higher pitch B sound to it, it isn't the worst I've used. And actually, once you get it out a bit, it really is quite unobtrusive, and that does mean that you can fly it around places that you may not want to fly something like this. What I'll do now is put a bit of B-roll up on the screen so you can hear what it sounds like, and overall it really isn't as bad as some of the others that are out there, including the Avata. Before I share with you my final thoughts, I want to talk about price. Now, this new IH3 costs between $550 and $580, depending on the receiver configuration. Now, I know there are going to be people that say that is very, very expensive. However, please do take into account the cost of the O3 air unit. That part in itself is $230. And when you take that off, you're not actually paying that much more for this ready-to-fly quad. Yes, some of the prices of iFlight components might be higher than other manufacturers, but overall it isn't a particularly bad deal. But I do regularly see comments from people when they are seeing these bind and fly quads being shown saying, wow, that's ridiculously expensive, I could build it much cheaper. Yes, there are quads you can build cheaper, but you have to take into account the general quality of the components being used, the fact it is ready to fly, and the additional cost of things like the O3 air unit. Overall, pricing really isn't terrible. I have no issues with it at all. iFlight are absolutely going to be making money on this, but it really isn't as much as you think. And if you compare Bind and Fly to other manufacturers, it is all very comparable. The real cost now is in these digital FPV systems. Okay, so to share with you my thoughts on the IH3. Now, overall, I think it's a nice quad, but it isn't perfect. There are some things I think could be better. Number one, the size of the motors. I think they should have been a little bit bigger. I will probably upgrade the motors on this quad myself. It's certainly not terrible. It's certainly not a deal breaker. But if you're somewhere like I am where it is windy, it needs a little bit more power. Also, there is that thing with the GPS lock, but you can pull the antenna down and put it to the side. The real annoyance with that more than anything is the fact that you can't power the GPS from the USB port on the flight controller, which means you're having to waste battery. It is sort of out of iFlight's control somewhat. You're having that O3 antenna over the top of the GPS. There really isn't anywhere else they can put the GPS. It's just becomes a problem of physics at this point, with things blocking it in the way. When it was locked and in flight, there was no problem at all. The real time took in the acquisition stage, but my advice would be, when you're putting it on the deck and waiting for it, pop the antenna off, put it to the side, let it get its lock, pop it back in, and then you're ready to fly. But it would have been nice if you could have powered that from the USB. Now, there are obviously going to be some people that won't like the frame design because of the fact you can't change the arms and it is all part of the bottom plate. But in my opinion, this isn't really a basher quad or one you want to really damage too much. For me, this is a nice, small, lightweight filming quad. And actually, this quad is about the perfect size for me. I love quads of this size. They're nice and easy to carry. You can get good footage from them. And it really is quite quiet in flight as well. It's really not obtrusive when you're out and about with it. And it gets decent flight time too. On the 850 milliamp hour packs I was using, which were 4S, obviously, I was getting around 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. You will get longer flight time if you want to choose a lithium-ion battery as well. Overall, I think it's a nice quad. It's not perfect. I wouldn't say yes, absolutely run out and buy it, but I also wouldn't say don't buy it either. I think what you've got to make a decision on is what is right for you on this. Are you somewhere where there's a lot of wind? If you are, maybe you want to be taking that into account. But other than the things I've mentioned, overall, it's a nice package. The real nice thing I will say with this is the fact that it is a nice out-the-box quad from iFlight. They really are doing a great job with their bind and flies at the moment. They are literally delivering very well-made products, which means you can literally get them going, get flying, and not have to worry about all of the hassle of soldering. But there are other manufacturers that do make good ready-to-fly quads as well. But personally, I've never had a problem with any of the iFlight ones myself. So if it is something that interests you, it's definitely worth a look. Okay, so that is pretty much it from me on this one. Now, I want to say a big thank you to iFlight for sending it over. I will be making more content on this quad in the future. I will be making a video on upgrading the motors, actually, because I'm going to need to do that down here because it is a little bit windy. Now, if you have found this video useful, please do make sure you are subscribed. I'm really interested in hearing your comments and thoughts in the description as well. So please put them in the comments section below and I'll try and answer any questions you may have. Furthermore, if you'd like to support the channel to allow us to keep making content, please do consider checking out the links to my Patreon as well as buy me a coffee. It's only through the support of my patrons I'm able to keep making content on this channel. And if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep making content in the future, please do consider checking it out. Anyway, that's it from me. Stay safe. I'll speak to you soon.